started on going live. That's great. So everybody, if you're getting inquiries from folks, they can watch us live streaming on the city's YouTube channel right now. Okay, so Mr. Chair, I will toss it over to you to get us started.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. There we go. Thank you all very much. Appreciate everybody joining today, and particular thanks to Kevin as well as Kyle for y'all's presentations today. Thank you all very much. Good to see everybody who is on. I'm sure we'll have some additional folks joining, but to Kaylin's point, we'll go ahead and get started. And couple just housekeeping items. Bob Haybig is going to be rolling off the committee, and then we also have a new member joining. And Dale, if you could, Dale or Kaylin, if you could give a quick rundown of Andrew's background. Who was appointed by the mayor, will be joining us next meeting to represent the environmental community. Yeah, and Dale, if you could give a
quick. The mayor's recommended to council to appoint Andrew Wunderly, who's the Charleston waterkeeper, to fill the conservation and environmental community slot here on the committee. I think several folks on this call are familiar with Andrew, but let him do his introductions when he joins, hopefully at the next meeting. He'll be slated to be on the appointment agenda calendar for the next council meeting in June. So we'll keep you all posted on that. And same thing with, we don't have a recommendation yet from the mayor on Bob's position, because I think Bob has to formally let us know that he'll be leaving the committee. But as soon as that happens, we'll keep you all posted on that front as well.
Do you think that somebody could do a press release about this, keep the visibility of this committee on people's minds? That would be good.
It's certainly something when we get through to the city council meeting that we can touch base with our PIO folks to see if it's some noise we can make and highlight through our different channels and also. Thank you, Susan. Good suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll go for it, Dave.
Hey, good. Once we get if Bob doesn't join us, but at the appropriate time, we should get a formal resignation letter from him, and then we will work with the mayor to have an appointment to have him replaced. He's irreplaceable, but we'll find someone else to represent the organization that he's representing. It's important. So
great. Well, thank you all. Well, to your point earlier, we do a jam-packed agenda, so I'll go ahead and Dale, hand it back over to you for any city updates and get us kicked off with some exciting presentations from Kevin and Kyle.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And thanks again to Kevin and Kyle for being our teachers today. It's much appreciated. Just a couple quick updates from my perspective. The Chiefs report is per schedule, still in Washington at headquarters being reviewed. It is still on schedule to be formally presented and signed by the Chief of Engineers of the Army Corps, Lieutenant General Spellman, on June 1st. That's still on schedule, so we haven't heard anything different. Related to that, the WRDA bills, the Water Resources Development Act bills that through which Congress authorizes water control projects every couple of years, they are moving through both the House and the Senate. Both the House and the Senate committees of jurisdiction, transportation and infrastructure in the House, energy, public works and environment. Sorry, my lights went out here. I'm in the MEOC, and anyway, I will stand up and get some, this is great, energy efficiency, but it's spooky, isn't it? Anyway, I'll just keep going on. Hold on, let me just stand up here.
That's fine.
There we go. So those bills are moving, EPW in the Senate, TNI in the House. That's good. They do have language in there to allow the PED phase for a number of Army Corps projects to move forward, including Charleston. So we're thankful for that, and we're in touch with the congressional delegation about that. You would still need a separate appropriation And we'll see after the authorization how that proceeds. We would call their Shores Act that I keep referencing. A lot of the language from the Shore Act as originally introduced is in the Word of bill, not all of it. We are monitoring that, so that's good. Again, that would create a lot of flexibility to do more than just surge with Army Corps projects, and also focus on nature-based features and provide some additional benefits for equity. So this is an important thing. Moving on, the city and Del Taurus and the Department of Homeland Security are in a project with on something called the Community Flood Resilience Support System tool. We can present on it later at another meeting when we want something else to talk about, but this is just a community flood planning tool to go into the community with. It isn't for designing the size of pumps and pipes or anything like that, but it allows you to work with the community to explore various options. It's an exciting tool, and again, we're a pilot for that. Regarding the water plan procurement, it was open and closed on May 5th, and we have 5 very good proposals in. Selection committee will have its initial meeting next week on that. It's encouraging, and I am hopeful that we could have a robust team on board starting in July. Again, that's an ambitious schedule, but I'm hopeful. Just 2 other short things. I attended the National Academy of Science and Engineering and Medicine, their workshop on nature-based features with the Army Corps of Engineers in Georgia a couple of weeks back. A lot of people were part of that. It was a very powerful group. Todd Bridges and a lot of folks from the Engineering with Nature program within the Army Corps of Engineers attended. It was an open, frank discussion about the policy constraints and other challenges within the Corps and within federal processes to do nature-based features within projects. Strong commitment by the Corps and others to try to do better. And we do anticipate the National Academies is going to make a set of recommendations to Congress and to OMB in the White House to loosen up the constraints, the policy constraints that make it difficult for the Army Corps of Engineers. So that's encouraging. And finally, the Nature Conservancy, Circulus, landscape architects, Robinson Design Engineers, Biohabitats, and others in the city, we're a part of this nature-based exchange set of workshops that kicked off last week. There are 5 more planned over the next year. And once we're done with that, we should have a set of localized recommendations on these things, nature-based features for projects here. So that's great. The next one is in July, and these are sort of invite only right now. But again, Susan was part of last week's effort, and we will continue to invite people from this committee if they want to join. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dale. And with that, we'll go ahead and hand it over to Kevin. Appreciate you giving this this presentation, Kevin. Looking forward to it.
You bet. Hey, good, Dale and Kaylin. Thanks for the invitation to share this deck, and apologies to those who attended the Core SC launch a month ago. Some of this will be a little redundant, and Dan, you've seen this many times, so if you want to take a little nap, I won't be offended. Let me just pull this up on the screen, and hopefully, can you all see the PowerPoint now?
Yep.
Okay. So let me get this started. I referenced the Core SC launch event, which happened last April. Core SC is the acronym for the Center of Resilience Excellence, South Carolina. It's a consortium that was founded a couple of years ago by the Aquarium, Charleston County Municipal Government, and the College of Charleston. And then the public launch event was somewhat deferred thanks to COVID and the events of the last couple of years. But the premise is very simple, really. It's to create a mechanism in which we can create a more resilient community and state by investing in innovative tools and solutions, both stimulating the economy and protecting the environment and everything that we love here, including ourselves and our families and our properties. And it's designed such that these solutions will be scalable and replicable, not only around the state, but ideally other parts of the country, as well as even global in scope. And it takes a real emphasis on tapping both the diverse talent in our state, but also addressing the critical needs of different populations. And then finally, it really is intended to serve somewhat uniquely as a point of intersection between government entities, between private industry and the nonprofit sector, as well as the public, engaging the public in arriving at these solutions. So since we've launched and signed the MOU with the founding partners, we brought on board as official partners Dominion Energy and SCRA, as well as the South Carolina Office of Resilience. And the subtext to all of this activity is that it's really being driven by the notion of creating a center of excellence with NASA here in the Charleston region. There are roughly a dozen centers of excellence that NASA operates with different focuses around the country, for instance, on meteorology or space technology and application. And here we would have the very first NASA Center of Excellence focused on resilience. And NASA's been a very proactive partner in helping us to achieve this early scaling and modeling, and is very excited that we're now taking the additional step of getting some funding from the state government to make the entity official, and then ultimately lead to NASA's embrace of this effort and to have a footprint here. Just very quickly, the core SC focus areas, water, energy, connectivity, agriculture, natural hazards. The intersection with this 3x3x3 committee is obviously through water management and contending with sea level rise, but also natural hazards and the impacts that those could have related to our environment. So I'm going to share with you this morning one of the early deliverables that has come out of Core SC in the way of predictive technology. And by that, we mean something that can be applied to consider future hazards and future conditions that we can begin to mitigate and adapt to now. Specifically, storm surge inundation modeling, which is simply taking from a data perspective, everything that we understand in terms of atmospheric conditions, and then drilling down those risks to consider their impacts at a very localized level. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second. We being the South Carolina Aquarium, invited the partnership with Dr. Harry Wang and the Virginia Institute of Marine Science a few years ago, with the notion that there are many different competing technologies out there, but they're one of the gold standards in terms of innovation and particularly its application and their interest in solving some of the solutions that are unique to our local footprint. So what we asked them to do is to design a model for us that would understand what would happen in different storm conditions with different elements of sea level rise along our South Carolina coast, from essentially Cape Romaine, which is the largest sea turtle nesting habitat in our state, all the way down to Savannah. So really the entire low country watershed is part of the scope of this exercise. And once we received some very generous grant support from EDA, the Economic Development Administration, we were able to proceed with this project and then folded it in naturally to the Core SC portfolio once that was launched. So VIMS has had a lot of experience in developing and refining this model out of the gate. They conducted a post-mortem study on Hurricane Sandy, the superstorm, more than a dozen years ago now. And what they did is they took the available data and the known impacts of Hurricane Sandy and tested it against the model that they arrived at. And there was really just a stunning accuracy of more than 99% accuracy in the model's ability to predict the impacts that actually occurred through Sandy. And they since rolled out this technology in a lot of other markets. And Kyle, I know you and the folks at Norfolk are obviously very intimately familiar with Dr. Wang and his team and the resources at VIMS. And this is the first application really outside of the Northeast for this VIMS technology. So storm surge inundation modeling is designed to allow us to ask an infinite variety of what if questions. So what if a superstorm like Sandy comes along our shores and has impact here? What if it happens 10 years from now or 30 years from now when we know that there'll be increased water level? What happens if it's preceded by a significant rain event, like we saw with Hurricane Matthew, where we had 5 days of significant rain across the state, and then simultaneously Hurricane Matthew appearing not on the shore, but several hundred miles offshore, but creating water pressure from both directions and really unprecedented flooding around the state. And then finally, what can we do about this? Where are these risks? What kind of measures can we take to mitigate and adapt to the effects? For example, developing a seawall around Peninsula Charleston. And what we posited with VIMS, by sake of demonstration, is what would it look like if Hurricane Hugo, which is sort of the standard bearer for the worst hurricane in recent memory in Charleston, what if that were to happen today? And what if it would happen with a wall in place as well as without the wall? So that's the demonstration I'm going to share with you in just a second. I'm not going to try to define all the multivariate factors that inform this model. I'm not a scientist. I'm not Dr. Wang, but it does trade in a tremendous amount of data, considering atmospheric conditions for thousands of kilometers in every direction, that inform this model that's run through the supercomputers. And then it resolves those down to a very accurate and localized level at the surface. This is an image of, obviously, the Charleston Peninsula. That red line is the initial posited line from the Army Corps of Engineers. It's, as we all know, has changed somewhat and been modified over the course of the last 2 years, but this is the data that we had available when we started this project. It's very similar to what we have today, obviously, in many respects. So that red line indicates the seawall's activity. But you can continue to drill down and get increased resolution through this model, all the way really to the subgrid level of looking at these triangular applications, which are embedded with a tremendous amount of data and detail. So bathymetry, water elevation, topography, the land, the substrate, the surface, both built environment as well as green environment. And then all the factors atmospherically, the direction of the wind, the velocity, the size of the storm, tidal factors, all of those are baked into this model, which can be run in many different ways. And this even drills down further to a 1 meter resolution. So when we track the water, we can pretty much determine just right on our front door what it's going to look like in the instance of a storm, for example, Hurricane Hugo revisiting. So this is the model in a real-time run, and you're going to see blue areas of water start to populate across the peninsula. At its peak, you can see that the spine of the peninsula is still protected to the highest level of elevation along roughly King Street. Now the waters are receding. And this is without the wall in place. So even though the red line's there, this was just to posit what it would look like if Hurricane Hugo were to come back today, and the tremendous risk and exposure to people and property. So I'm going to advance the slide now, and now it's going to run again. And what this will show is that the Army Corps' projections and their own modeling are absolutely correct, that a wall around Peninsula Charleston of some form would have tremendous effect on protecting everything that we care about. So here come the same waters, the same impact of a Hurricane Hugo-like storm. And you'll see the pooling of the water along the Eastern Peninsula, which is why we at the aquarium are still a little concerned about the exact alignment here. But you'll see that the wall essentially protects the peninsula. And I'll let this continue to run out for a second. And I'm going to show on the next slide what we're working on right now, which is 3D modeling of this same factor and dynamic. This is a model with a little less resolution. I'm sorry for the music. I forgot it was on here. But it was done for Hurricane Hugo. I'm sorry, for Hurricane Sandy in New York. And you'll see the three-dimensional realization of the model. And there were several surges associated with Sandy. So you're going to see the waters come in and go out. In a little bit, you're going to see the waters at their peak up here. This colored bar on the right indicates the height in meters of the water. So it was a significant storm with devastating effect. And we're just about to approach the height of the storm here. So you'll start to see some red and violet that suggests tremendous flooding all across lower Manhattan. And there you have it. So we're doing the same thing for Peninsula Charleston, just because it gives another dimension of understanding of the potential impact and really tells the story of what's at risk. And this is just a first iteration of creating that model for Peninsular Charleston. Where do we stand today? We've had Charleston County already sign on as an early adopter to use this technology. But now that the cost of creating this large-scale model is already funded and paid for by EDA, additional iterations of the model, all these what-if questions we'd like to ask, are much less expensive. And so this model is available, and the aquarium and Core SC can serve as a partner in consulting VIMS. This model is available to any municipality, any government agency, any corporation that's planning to build somewhere in South Carolina to understand what might be at stake and that can inform their planning for the future. So that's it in a nutshell. And I don't know if there are any questions.
Say good. If we could, I'm sure there will be questions. Fascinating, Kevin. Thank you for sharing that. It's very striking to see that in the visual representation, of course. If we could hold questions until both presentations are wrapped up, that'd be just for time management. But no, again, Kevin, that's great, and looking forward to see a 3D modeling piece to it as well.
Perfect. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Dale, I'll hand it to you to introduce Kyle Spencer as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So, in my previous life, we had worked with VIMS, so I know some of the folks up there. It's a great organization. Has a sort of looks like the Water Institute of the Gulf, but has a different mandate to the state of Virginia. So different questions come to it, but it's a wonderful organization. So thanks to Kevin and Core SC and all the partners in there and EDA for making that model, because it will help us, all of us, in the future. And thanks for the presentation, Kevin. Appreciate it. So the next up, one of the mandates for the advisory committee is to learn what others are doing. I promised that we would find some folks from other places that are fussing around with the Army Corps of Engineers with a coastal CSRM project. Kyle and I go back probably about a decade when Kyle was working for Fugro and doing stormwater management for the city of Fugro is a Dutch American company. And Kyle was in the stormwater department there with Fugro. He moved to the city, and then he's now the acting CRO, and he is also the manager of the CSRM project that they have there that is 18 months, 2 years into PED. So Kyle and I talk regularly. He was in Charleston last year. He knows our problems, and I asked him to tell you all about the project they have, so you understand the context of it, and we'll do more of these in the future with other places. Kyle, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me and see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to real quickly chime in on Kevin's talk, I am a huge supporter of the work that VIMS does, and I commend you guys on building that type of model for your city. That's something I worked with Dr. Wang and Dr. Loftus on here in Norfolk starting back in probably 2014, and it really move the needle in telling our story and ultimately getting to a point kind of where we are today with this Army Corps project. It all kind of comes together. So anyway, yeah, I going to talk to you today about the Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Study. As Dale said, we are a couple of years into the PED process, but I'm going to take you a little bit through the entire process that we've been through, where we're going, and you'll see that that there's lots of opportunity for the non-federal sponsor to have input and say in these types of projects. So real quickly, I just wanted to make sure orient you quickly with Norfolk. We're very similar, I think, to Charleston. We're surrounded by water basically on three sides. We're a city defined by water, so to speak, with largest naval station in the world, third largest port facility, and lots of commercial industries and recreation that happen around our waterways here at the mouth of Chesapeake Bay. And we have a lot of the same flooding challenges as you guys. We're seeing the sea level rise phenomenon. Relative sea level rise in Norfolk is the second highest to New Orleans on the East Coast. So we're, sort of ground zero for a lot of the challenges that communities like ours are facing. And you can see in this image here, we've got a very built out city. We're about 95% developed. So we are seeing, as more rain falls from the sky, more runoff into our system to deal with. And the groundwater is rising with the sea levels. So you put all these things together, and it creates a lot of hard work for us. And but we're focused on turning these challenges into opportunities, and through innovation as well. I know it's tough with the Army Corps, but I think today you'll see some ways where the Corps is actually open-minded to some of these innovative techniques that we're testing out in Norfolk, where we see ourselves as a living laboratory to develop these new resilience innovations, similar to the goals that Kevin was speaking to with the Corps project. So, lay the foundation here a bit with the risks that we're talking about. I got a couple slides to bring that home. If you take all the 25 highest water levels that happened at the Sewell's tide gauge, which is basically the gauge that the news and everybody in our region uses to sort of predict water levels and storms around. All the weathermen and women are using it. And if you take all those highest water levels, half of them have occurred since the year 2000. And so, it's just sort of, it's clear to us in the data, we have our own tide gauges and sensors. We're seeing it in our data as well, that this is happening more frequently and more severe. Around +4, this orange line I have, that's about when the city begins to kind of shut down services. We won't pick up trash in certain neighborhoods. So that's a threshold that we like to use a lot in our discussions with the Corps as well. That's when we typically would operate our existing flood wall gates and close those off. And so, just to take a look at downtown Norfolk, we have a core downtown. We're really the only core business district downtown in Hampton Roads like this. So we have lots of influx of residents coming into downtown and leaving, as well at the north part of the city. At the base, we have over 80,000 daily commuters to the base. And so we're an important city trying to maintain. And over the years, our ancestors, have created, these unintended consequences for us, where they filled in these old creek beds. My background is GIS and environmental studies. And one of the things I used to do a lot of is find these old maps, georeference them, and overlay the shoreline with today. And that's what I've done here. Then I threw some flooding on top of it. And you can see it's pretty clear we flood where we filled. And this is something that Dale and I worked together with the Dutch on during our Dutch dialogues. We created a lot of these types of maps and worked through workshops. I know you guys have done a Dutch dialogues in Charleston. And I think those are great efforts. And those are things that we're trying to feed into the core process, I guess you could say, as we reimagine our city in the future. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So in the Army Corps process, this is a workflow chart that they provided in a slide deck a couple of years ago. But this is basically the CSRM process. And I put in here on this flow chart these black dates to kind of give you an idea of how long we've been at this in Norfolk. Our project was identified, this problem identification step. The first step was the part of the North Atlantic Comprehensive Coastal Study that the Corps of Engineers did after Hurricane Sandy. And that report was the final report was released in January of 2015. And so that's where Norfolk was identified as a locality that needed to be evaluated for the feasibility of building a coastal storm flood protection system. And so we started that feasibility study in 2016. And that's around the time the city's Office of Resilience was created. a little bit after that. This is around the time we were applying for the National Disaster Resilience Competition. And so our office took over the management of this project because it was a long-term, sort of project that we really honestly didn't think would be constructed in any of our lifetimes. We had an authorized project to nourish the beaches along the bay in 1984, and we did not nourish those beaches until 2016 and 17. So that was sort of the timeline that we thought this project would be under. Fortunately for us, and in a lot of the country, the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act really changed the game for us. So we got the feasibility study started in 2016, $3 million, 3 years, 3 levels of review. And we completed that with a chief's report signed in 2019 that went to Congress. Congress authorized that project under the WRDA bill, Water Resource Development Act of 2020. And a little bit of a nuance here, but we actually got in the appendix of the 2018 WRDA, which allowed us to kind of start PED with a small amount of money. PED really doesn't pick up, the pre-construction engineering design phase doesn't really pick up till step 12 here. But you can see, we were authorized in 2020. We kind of hopped to step 12 for a little bit, but all that goes away in 2020 with WRDA. We're officially in the bill, and so now we have an authorized project, and we created this design agreement with the Corps and got to work really in early 2020. The design agreement was signed in 2019, but we got to work in 2020, rolling up our sleeves and starting doing a lot of the early stages of PED. And I'll have a list of some of those items here in a second. And then what we're going towards now that we've got into this construction phase, you can see the legend here. We're trying to get to this construction phase. We're still sort of technically in PED because we haven't signed our project partnership agreement, which codifies all of the things that are involved with a new start construction. So we're going to go from everything in PED is going to kind of roll into this phase down here. And keep in mind, you can do engineering and design during a construction designation by the Corps. So they call it construction, but you're still designing many, it's a large project, large pieces to it. And so you're breaking it up into pieces. And so you're designing as you're building along the way. And I have some examples of that. Our project was a $1.4 billion project in the cost estimates. In our CSRM study, that was 2019 report. The dollars for a lot of that were more like 2017 and 18, just because that's how long it kind of takes to clean up the report and submit it and reviews and everything through the Corps process. So we've updated our numbers just recently, actually, to 2022 dollars, and that project is now $1.8 billion. So and so our 35% on top of that, just to do some quick math, is over $600 million. And so right now we are working through that process of our funding. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's the risk that we built. We're building our project to the level of risk that we're seeing in our city. This entire area up here that I'm circling is the Norfolk Naval Station, largest naval base in the world. And this corner right here is our international terminal that the Virginia Port Authority operates and maintains. And then there's a large terminal down here, a coal terminal. And so the Corps under this authorization is not allowed to do work on the base. It's a civil works project, and so they're not allowed to use those funds on DoD facilities. Again, I think there's a lot of parallels here to your communities down there. And so this is what we're trying to protect against. They do this optimization in the feasibility study to come up with the storm event that you're able to design to. And to get the right economics. And so we're not designing to the Army Corps 100-year flood. We're designing to the Army Corps'. It's really about a 50-year storm. We like to use words like annual, the annual chance of the probability of this happening every single year. And so our storm event is 1.4%. There's a 1.4% chance every year that we could see this storm event you see on the screen. And so what we did was we came up with a plan to stop that. And so this is the before future without a project. Here's the future with a project. Now, there's large, there's a legend here, large surge barriers across this Lafayette River here. This is a large river estuary. We're completely tidal. We don't have any riverine flooding in Norfolk. All of our 100-year, all of our flood zone mapping by FEMA is a coastal mapping exercise. And by the way, this 2075 event that we're designing to, under the core guidelines, is much higher level of protection than the FEMA 100 years. So the FEMA and the core don't use the same modeling and numbers. And so the 100-year annual flood in Norfolk is, we'll call it 8 to 9 feet. And our design level for this project is around 11.5. And then in some areas where we have the wind and the fetch, the protection has more vertical height to it, up to 16.5 feet. And that's the count for waves and wave run up and overtopping. So 16.5 feet is the level. NAVD 88 basically means sea level that we're protecting to. I don't recall what your level of protection is down there, but I believe it's lower. And so that's a significant structure. But we've got large floodgates going across this mouth of this river. This is about a $500 million gate on its own, and not just one big gate. There's a sector gate in the middle and sluice gates, little openings along the way for tidal flushing. Perimeter walls kind of through around downtown. We'll have a small gate here at the Hague. More walls and berms. We're not, where we have the space on the ground, we are pushing the Corps to put in more green infrastructure than the gray walls, and I'll talk about that some more. This area here that's in blue, that's our Ohio Creek NDRC project. This map is a little bit outdated. It should be white and not flooded because we are in the last year of construction for that. So we're super excited on that one. One more large gate, another gate up here as well on this north end of the city. And then this lake has a weir box, so that's high enough elevation, it's not tidally influenced. So that's overall kind of what we're doing. I'm going to drill into our PED phase now, what we're really focused on. So when we came up with that plan, part of the process is to prioritize these, and again, break off these separable elements, they call it, like sort of chunks of the project. You can't build $1.8 billion in one go. You've got to break it up. And so we focused the Corps on this. We have an existing downtown flood wall, so we're basically starting there at one end of it and working our way to protect the rest of downtown and some critical communities that are severely underserved and are lowest income and most socially vulnerable communities. We're protecting them as well in this first phase. So to give you an idea of the funding, again, remember 3x3x3 is a 50-50 cost share for us. And then the PED phase that we started out in, again, before we got to the new start this year, we had 8.4 million, and that was a cost share 65-35. And so our share of that 8.4 was around 2.9. But again, we're focused down here. We've got these priorities. We're doing this, core downtown, then we're going to hop over here to this area. And then this large barrier, and then this barrier where you see the hatching. Those are non-structural things. Those are house raising, basement fills, flood proofing, and some buyouts. And so there's some areas of the city where it just wasn't didn't make sense with the benefit cost ratios to build a structural protection system. And so these areas and hatched are the non-structural. But some of that is a little bit disappointing that this entire area doesn't get a structural measure. It has two historic neighborhoods, primarily African-American communities. And so we do get heartburn over that. Environmental justice and equity are a big deal in Norfolk. With the new administration in the White House, that is also a priority. And so we hope to kind of work through some of those topics with the Corps as we move forward. And so looking at the dollars in the IIJA, it was a $400 million, it was in two allocations. We had 250 million that came to us in the beginning of the year. And then a couple weeks or months later, beginning of April, I guess it was, they announced another disbursement. So we had 250 plus 150, got us to 400 million. It's a good start on the 1.8 billion. And so to unlock all of that, the city or the non-federal sponsor would need to come up with 215 million. Right now, the city is the only player in that game. We are working with the state of Virginia and the Commonwealth to get them to help us with our share. Because again, this is the largest type of investment our city's ever had to come up with. And then that those dollars go towards developing those plans and specs. Again, you can do design and begin the construction on that citywide plan. And as you show progress and as you keep moving, the federal government will keep funding this. They have to build the entire system. No holes in the system are allowed. So, and they've proved that down in New Orleans this past year with Hurricane Ida and others. So they're keen on making sure we build the entire system. So once that boulder starts rolling down the hill, it's going to go all the way to the bottom. And when you look at our city, again, this color-coded map is matching it up with these sort of Gantt chart looking timetables here. So that all the orange area, everything protected by this red line that's colored in orange is where we're starting. And you can see we're staggering the designs, which are the colors, the gray are construction. And with that 615 million, we think we can get 1, 2, and 3 and start piloting some different non-structural design pieces. They're so nuanced. Every site is almost has its own, things to deal with that are unique. And so we want to get some good examples of a slab, of a crawl space, of a basement fill, various different examples of age, historic properties, not historic, and start piloting some of those. So we're carving out, 30 million or so to work on that. And the rest, we're going to work through design and begin construction. We've got a large event happening in 2026 downtown, the Sale 250. So we're trying to avoid construction in the downtown area until that has happened. So you can see this Town Point Park, that park that was in the first image. We won't begin that construction until the federal fiscal year Q4. These are all federal fiscal years up at the top. Sorry. So again, we'll work through as we're designing some of these areas. We could, if we have funding, we can be designing other parts of the city. And now at first the Corps came to us with this diagram and everything was really stacked on top of each other and not spread out so much in around 26, 27. And we said, well, during those 2 years, you have us needing to provide like $300 million in 2 years. And that's not something we can probably do. So we're trying to spread these construction phases out so they're not all on top of each other at the same time. So it's one thing, again, you have flexibility, you have the ability to negotiate and work through these things with the Corps as you get into the process. So drilling down into that phase 1 construction, I'm going to talk about what's involved with that now. This is just a zoomed in view of that map again. Everything in orange will be protected, and we're going around the some critical facilities, our trauma center and largest hospital, the Children's Hospital, EVMS, medical school, and a core downtown. Again, Tidewater Gardens is one of those public housing communities we're redeveloping. And so we had charrettes with the Corps. It's a kind of a, I don't think it's something the Norfolk district anyway had done before. This is something I think maybe some of you are familiar with like the Dutch dialogues, where you basically bring in everybody in the room and you roll up your sleeves with trace paper and you start drawing on things. And it's just, brainstorming almost ideas. And then those get defined and redefined into more of a design drawing. But each box here represents a charrette that we did. So we did 5 charrettes with the Corps. We did 4. We kind of combined these 2 over here. But we spent all day in the room working with them. And a good example of what comes out of that is this segment right here. Again, this is that critical downtown park. They had a wall going through here. So you would be driving along, you wouldn't see the river anymore. You wouldn't see anything but a wall. And that wasn't acceptable to us. So we did the charrette, and now that's going to be a berm. And I can show you some examples what I mean by that, a berm or a levee. We're rebuilding all the promenade back here, and there's a lot of design challenges with that, with the existing buildings. And the Corps was flexible and came up with some innovative ways to work through that. Where we have the space again, these parking lots near the ball field, we're going to build the levee or the berm. There's going to be 4 pump stations as part of this project. And those will be designed and built by the Corps as well. And then we're having to work through a large development that's happening concurrently in the city. A casino is being proposed right here next to the ball field. And so they're designing and building the flood protection to the Corps standard as part of their project. At first, they were not interested in going to that level of protection, but through negotiations, through workshopping, lots of hand holding, we're getting them there. We found a solution. I can talk about what that looks like. So that's the detail. And when I talk about these charrettes, this is what I mean. We were all locked in the room here. This is the majority of these people you see are the Corps. We got papers out. We're tracing, and we came up with this idea here that is now being designed. The mayor did throw curveball at us last night. We presented an update to City Council. And he's like, why don't we just close this whole road right through here and make the park big? And so we might redo this part. I'm not sure, but again, this is just something where the Corps did come in with one idea, and we worked through them with a different idea. This is a key kind of view shed, and so we're pointing this out. We want gates right there to make sure we don't lose that line of sight back to the river. The types of flood protection we're talking about here in downtown. We have an existing eye wall, flood wall, and some of those had issues during Katrina. And so the Corps says if it's higher than 6 feet above the ground, your wall needs to be this T-wall design, basically an upside down T. And this T-wall has these battered piles in it. They're angled piles that get hammered into the ground. And so when you're surrounded by existing buildings and infrastructure, these can be a challenge. And so the Corps went to work, and they came up with this bin wall concept. It's basically a gravity supported wall. You fill this bin like a trash bin with dirt, soil, and rocks, and then you can pave the top of it and put it as a trail. And there's a little parapet wall that you can either have permanently sticking up, or you can deploy on it. And this is something they haven't been doing really. So this is again a kind of innovative for the Corps, so to speak. And then again, I think we all understand what an earthen levee is. So I won't drill into that too much, but there are segments where we're doing that. And so when you look at that bin wall, again, this is existing conditions at downtown next to Waterside. It's a relatively brand new development. We struggled to find some of these older buildings, drawings with the piles and how they're built. All this again is filled land. So we're sitting on top of piles that are 100 feet long or so. And so today you walk out, you go down, and you can go out to the marina. Well, in the future, we're going to build this thing up way higher than it was before. And you can basically go straight out now. And then we'll have to redo some of the gangways and the steps down to the marina. And we are working with them on, what that means to them. And they, at first, were hesitant. Once they realized what we were talking about, they saw the opportunity to update some of their facility since we're going to be impacting it. So we're coordinating those types of things. Some things become a betterment, and that's a term the Corps uses where the non-federal sponsor may, if they want to dress something up or make it look, maybe, I use the sundae kind of analogy, plain vanilla versus a chocolate sundae. So if you want the chocolate sundae, sometimes you may have to throw in a little bit more of your dollars, but they can't stop the functionality of a marina. So they will have to keep that working and rebuild some of the docks back themselves. But, depending on the details of that may have to come maybe over cost. So we're working on the casino. Like I said, we're incorporating a trail system, and you can kind of see on here, but there's a wall right here with deployables. So in this section, they want walls to pop up. So the base of that deployable is around 11 feet. And then the extra 4 or 5 feet we need is going to deploy and it's recessed in the ground. It's going to pop up. And these are the areas where they have the most view shed and want to look out. There's other areas where they're going to slide in stop logs, they call them. And those are again, you're only deploying these when the worst of the worst storm comes. So 99% of the time, you'll never see these things. But the city will have to operate and maintain them and test them once a year throughout the project. And so I just wanted to highlight real quickly some of the PED activities that are involved. And really, until you do some of this site characterization, it's really hard to understand the full breadth of the project and the impacts it's going to have. And some of that actually helps you get some flexibility and change things. But these are some of the activities we started back in 2020, and it's kind of slow going with the Corps. And so we've also brought in our own city contractors to speed things up, like interior drainage analysis. We already had the models built for much of downtown for other projects. And so we could just take that and run with it for faster and quicker. You're going to do more detailed design drawings. You're going to update your project costs and develop the schedule in PED. And then really the real estate coordination is a key aspect of the project. It's something they're always warning us about. And so you want to be thinking really far ahead on the real estate needs and getting your land certified, getting all that squared away, environmental cleanup, et cetera. Those two aspects are 100% the responsibility of the non-federal sponsor. Some of those activities do count towards your 35%. Even if you already own the property and stuff, you can still appraise it and get credit for that in your 35%. So again, we've got the design agreement, and you do a design agreement and a project management plan during PED, and then you create the PPA when you go into construction. And then you work through that QA/QC, quality assurance, quality control, and risk assessment during PED as well, kind of just refreshing everything in the feasibility study. And this coastal analysis is a key aspect, especially for us with the floodgates. A lot of our NGOs and others that care about, we all care about the water quality and the cleanup that's been going on in our rivers. And so they want to make sure we have the proper tidal flushing and everything. And so that coastal analysis informs the design quite a bit. And that's something we're working on as well. So as we just sort of last slide, as we transition out of PED, we're developing that project partnership agreement. It's going to codify the construction phasing, a financial plan, a joint communication plan. That's probably one of the most important things you can do, and be working on that heavily in PED as well. We're creating a website. We launched it last night as well for this project. And the communication plan, has your talking points, has all the meetings you're planning to go to, and that sort of thing. It's a lengthy document. All that gets kind of rolled up in the PPA. Our office is relatively small. And so for us to keep managing this project, we do get help from Public Works and other departments. We're going to bring on put out a large contract request for proposals to bring on a program management contractor to kind of oversee all these various aspects, help us oversee all these various aspects, and work through those. And so we're working on getting that out there. And then again, we're trying to get the state to help, and the state does have a community flood preparedness fund grant program that we did recently ask for 28 million out of. Not sure if we'll get that, but it's just sort of our way of starting that conversation. We have a new governor, a new administration up there in Richmond, so and then we kind of flipped parties. So it's a little bit of different conversation with the Republican governor than we've had previously with the Democratic governor. And so we're working through getting the state on board. And these are some of the funds that we've gotten from the state thus far to do value engineering, that coastal analysis. Our original PED project did not have enough funds to do those elements. And so we requested it to do that ourselves with state funding, and we received those. And then we found out a few weeks later that we got our project funded by the IIJA. So anyway, just lots of funding in here to work through it. So I think that's all I've got. I know I've talked a while. I'm sure there's some questions, so I'll just stop there and see if I can answer questions.
Thank you very much, Kyle. It's hugely appreciated giving this presentation, and great to see y'all are I think just a step ahead of us here. So it's great to see some of the stuff we've talked about in theory being put into practice. But with that, I'll we have about 5 minutes left in the regularly scheduled time, but can certainly, if y'all wouldn't mind, certainly stick around, answer those questions. But I'll open up the floor if there are any questions. Susan, I see your hand up. Please go for it. Susan, you're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. This it helps visualize where we may be headed, which is great. I wanted to ask you what the community response has been to this, and whether you had any issues with your city council governing board in moving ahead, because we have that here.
So I think fortunately in our city, our city council and mayor have always been supportive of this project going back to those earlier years. So I think where they get nervous is again being transparent and communicating as best we can the reality of the situation, especially in areas like the non-structural, like what that really means. That's an area they pointed out last night that we need to be focused on. But our city council has been pretty bold over the years with the most resilient zoning code in America that we can tell. You can't build slab on grade. You can't, so we have a stringent freeboard requirement for flood zones. So I think in our city, we're really, I think gotten past some of that over the years. 10 years ago, completely different story probably. But I think the data collection, telling that story of the why has gotten us, to this point where we don't get a lot of opposition. Now the funding obviously is scary, to figure out, but I think, we've got a good team working on that as well. So I think we're just kind of giving them confidence that we're on top of it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, can you flesh out the funding planning piece a bit? That's I think a common concern here as well as I'm sure everywhere. Yeah. So they do give us estimates for each of these large pieces, and the way they talk about funding when you get into like the big numbers is they typically want before they can execute a contract. So they would want the funding ahead of that, and so you have time to work through it and plan and figure it out, because again, we're a couple years still. So there's time for us to work through finding the funding sources and putting it, that full stack together. The first way we're approaching it right now is with a capital improvement program project. So we've carved out $70 million over the next 2 years in our CIP for this project. Where it goes from there, I'm not sure. Our neighbors at the beach did a bond referendum to do flood control projects with those funds, but they did not have a CSRM. And I think our thoughts on that idea right now would be not to hold a bond referendum, because it kind of gives the idea that there's an option out of this, and we don't want people to be able to say no necessarily. So I think how we get there, that full amount is not fully understood yet. But again, you've got time, and I think there's lots of ways to do it. I don't know if the state of South Carolina would get behind you guys on this. I know in Louisiana, Dale probably knows better, but there's some states that cover the entire non-federal share. So we're just sort of doing that research, trying to figure out different models, what would work. But it takes a lot of time working with our budget and finance office and their consultants to figure it out. We don't have it figured out yet. Understood. No, that's a good color. Thanks, Kyle. Kevin, I see your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, no, we're running short on time. But Kyle, you mentioned the betterments along the parkway and the berm and maybe even elimination of the road. Can you share how pervasive betterments are throughout the scope of the entire plan?
Yeah, so we so far they have not identified any specific betterments. We're relatively early in the design. We expect 35% drawings this summer, but the district commander here, Colonel Hallberg, has told his staff that he wants to push the envelope here, do everything they can in their power to not to minimize betterments. We've also had folks from North Atlantic Division come down and supported this project. The Assistant Secretary of the Army was down recently. And so all of those same folks are hearing people like me and others say, you know, how important this project is and the issues with it and betterments come up. And they've also reinstated to the colonel to do everything he can to minimize the betterment. So we don't know what the betterments are yet, but I feel good that they're at least being asked to minimize them. You know, for a good example would be the pump stations. The pump station we have currently with the flow wall is this big, great, ugly box. And nobody else in the city can build a building like that downtown. It's got to look and feel a certain way. And so the Corps is going to have to do that. Now they may say some of that architectural features of the outside of the building maybe become a betterment, but they haven't said that yet. So we're still kind of waiting to see.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, Neil. I mean, geez, great question, Kevin. Sorry, kind of getting over a cold, but yeah, and thank you for the answer, Kyle. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments or thoughts there? Great. Well, Kyle, there may be some that come up after the Kyle and Kevin. There may be some that come up after the fact, and may fire those off to you ad hoc if you wouldn't mind. There are a lot of similarities from stuff that we're dealing with, so it was
Sure.
Still kind of digesting all of it, of course.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share the slide deck with Dale. If you just so you have something to refer back to if you need to. That's fine.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, just like y'all, we have a mix of public land, private land, alignment constraints. It's a lot of similarities. So appreciate all the information there, and that'd be great if you could share the presentation.
Yeah, just let me add here. So the Norfolk project, you saw those 4 distinct non-connected aspects of the protection, right? Whereas in Charleston, we have one sort of structure that is intended for the peninsula. The Miami project is sort of like the Norfolk project, where they're distinct phases and distinct structures that don't connect because they're in different parts of the neighborhood. So, but I mean, your phase 1, Kyle, is sort of, we're going to be doing a lot of that if we get that far. It's, how do you integrate the third structure with, high use, very important, visible, architecturally, historic structures. And then you have this potential, again, around the ball field with the casino. That's interesting that you're able to ponder these pop-up walls and these structures that are invisible during those times. And then when the bad storm is heading your way, you put them in place. That's very encouraging. And it's also encouraging that the Corps is trying to make improvements that they may otherwise call betterments. They're trying to make improvements as project features, which are then eligible for the cost share as opposed to 100% by the city or the non-federal sponsors. That's encouraging. So you keep pushing them so we can follow along maybe behind you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Good deal. Well, thank you all again for the time. Any other follow-up comments or questions or thoughts?
No, hey, good. I will, in my next communication with the committee, we've had some folks that Wednesday mornings are becoming a challenge for our monthly meeting. So we may ponder, and we'll touch base with you on a couple of other alternatives to perhaps do moving forward. So just stay tuned for that in next email communications.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you all.
You'll let us know if the chief's signature happens in a week.
Yes. And also everybody should have hopefully saw the new updated FAQ and information sheet that Susan and the communications working group worked really hard to put together. That is, I've updated the website. It's on there. And it's also went out in our city newsletter last week. So still time.
Right.
And
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. I should have said that earlier. I apologize.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
And one final update, Councilman Seekings pinged me and asked me why I forgot to tell everyone, and it's an important thing, the groundbreaking for the Earhart Tunnel drop shaft, the tunnel and the drop shaft that occurred on May 13th. That is a very important project to provide some stormwater relief and ponding relief for a decent portion of the medical district. And that will tie into the Spring Fishburne project. So that groundbreaking occurred. We're thankful to the state for providing the pass-through of the CDBGDR money to us for that. So that's happening. Again, all these things add up over time. That's good news.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. And with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. And yeah, again, look forward to seeing y'all in roughly a month, and then look out for some email communication in the interim.